Today's webinar is all about the safety and the quality guidelines that one has to follow while running a laboratory in current stressful settings, that is COVID times. I would like to introduce Dr. Neeraj Jain, today's speaker. Dr. Neeraj Jain is an MD methologist and holds a very renowned name in the specialty of pathology as well in quality. He is the current founder president of Medical Education and Learning Point, MELAP. He is also the managing director of Jain Diagnostics. He holds the position of secretary of Association of Practicing Pathologists. He has a rich experience of more than 25 years, and his particular areas of interest are pathology and quality, that is ISO 15189. Dr. Jain has also been conferred upon by a lot of awards and honors, few of them being National IMA Award of Merit 2014, IMA National President Award 2014, DMA Annual Award in 2014 and in 2017, and also he received the Best Institute for Health Education and Training Award to MELAP in the 10th Medgate Award. So over to you, Dr. Jain, for commencing the webinar. Dr. Jain, please on your audio. Please switch on your audio.
We always say, Vasudev Kutumbakam. All Earth is a family. And here, Transasia Biomedicals Limited has created this into reality. A big namaskar to all of you from me, to all participants participating from different parts of the globe, and also my best wishes to all of you. All of you are doing such a wonderful job in this stressful timing. Before starting, I would like to convey my respect towards my Guru, who has given me strength to develop abilities in me. And also I would like to convey my respect to my teachers, Professor S.K. Sood, former head of the pathology department in University College of Medical Sciences, and also Dr. Nishi Madan, professor and head University College of Medical Sciences, and also person who further enhanced my abilities like Mr. D.S. Tiwari. He is former NABL director, and also Dr. Rakesh Sharma. He kept this strength in my abilities, confidence in my abilities, and created many platforms for me to perform. And today I am here with all of you. And today we will discuss how we can manage our laboratory with safety and quality in this current scenario of COVID-19. All of you will agree with me. This is happening for the first time in the globe, when more than 90% population is sitting in their home for a single common cause. And what is that cause? COVID-19. And as a medical professional, and particularly our expertise in this laboratory medicine, we have a big responsibility how we can manage our laboratory, keeping in mind safety and quality. We were living comfortably on this planet Earth, and we were very happy. A lot of innovations are going on in this clinical medicine. So many procedures our people are developing in cardiology, gastroenterology, neuro, critical care. So much therapeutic advancement is going on, whether it is immunotherapy, target therapy, gene therapy, transplantation, robotics. What I mean to say, we were confident we can take care of any disease without any doubt in our mind. And same thing was true for our laboratory. We were developing new tests, new methods, how we can reduce turnaround time, how we can develop point of care testing for each and every test so that these tests are available right near the bedside. We were developing molecular diagnostics, pre-analytical automation like barcoding and pneumatic chute, And then people started talking about accreditation also. When we are doing such a wonderful job, so our laboratory shall be recognized by some third party. But then suddenly we entered this phase, December 2019. At the end of December 2019, when everybody was planning to welcome this 2020, suddenly we faced a lot of challenges. And this COVID-19 entered in our life and gradually involved the whole world, started from China and gradually involved the whole world, physically, mentally, emotionally, financially, in fact, all aspects of our life. And we were worried how to take care of all these things. As a laboratory person, what was the big challenge for us? How to keep ourselves updated with new and rapidly evolving technique, high expectation of accuracy, lack of quality control material, and understanding of this concept of quality, compliance with regulatory requirement, personal experience and knowledge, how we can train our people, capability of the test system, what is the reliability of a particular test, cost is also a very important factor for everybody, for user as well as for laboratory person, and correct interpretation of the test. If a test is positive, what is the implication of this? If a test is negative, can we rule out the possibility of particular disease? Pre-analytical nature of sample in this COVID time, whether a blood sample shall be taken or a swab shall be taken, from where and what is the correct methodology of its collection, and when we are collecting, how it shall be transported to laboratory. And sometimes what happens, although we are taking a lot of precautions, but some incorrect result may go undetected. Our government, our clinicians, our patients, they have a lot of expectations from us. Availability of test. What are the areas where a particular test is available? And patient involved, all test with comfort. Can you collect sample from home? Or can you collect sample from near our home? And all tests shall be available in a single laboratory, comprehensiveness. And this report shall be available as early as possible with reliability and accuracy. And sometimes clinician or patient want to know when a test shall be performed, or they want to know about interpretation, whatever information they want to know about a particular test, about the utility of the test. It is the responsibility of laboratory people to provide all that information. And all of you will agree with me, our reports have significant impact on clinical decision. In fact, 70% clinical decisions are based on our report. Everybody expects a error-free report, which is meaningful for clinician, so that they can make a correct diagnosis, correct treatment can be given to patient, and ultimately all these result in better patient care. Now, when we are talking so much about this quality, how we can generate an error-free result in our laboratory, we shall have topmost quality. So we have to understand some common terms which we use in our laboratory. Quality assurance. We are telling our regulatory bodies, we are telling our clinician, we are telling our patients, we will take care of all quality related issues. We will give you error-free report. But for this commitment, we have to develop a quality control in our lab, whether it is pre-examination, examination, post-examination. And to develop this quality control, what is required? We shall have a quality management system, a documented quality management system, so that there is harmonization in the laboratory and everybody is following that quality management system. Sometimes people say, we have a lot of automation. This machine is available only in our laboratory all across the country or all across the city. But remember one thing, if our pre-examination and post-examination processes are not well controlled and we bring in automation, what all we get is automated mess, nothing else. 80 to 85% errors occur during pre-examination. And if you see this COVID-19 scenario, if suppose swab is not collected properly or if it is not transported properly, then what we will do with our machines? Or if report is not communicated properly. So these pre-examination, post-examination processes are very important. We have to keep in mind. So people thought, regulatory body thought, we should have some system so that an external body is recognizing the quality in a particular laboratory. There are two options. One is certification and another is accreditation. In certification, you must have heard about this ISO 9001 certification. In certification, only documentations are assessed. Only documents are assessed. In accreditation, we see documentation and in addition, technical competence. In healthcare organization, this technical competence is very important. Then government thought we will go for accreditation in this COVID time. Now for this COVID-19 testing, this is a regulatory requirement. That means this is a requirement from the government. They will allow only those laboratories which have accreditation. Why they thought of this accreditation? Ministry of Health and Family Welfare, they asked this Indian Council of Medical Research, you ensure what our test shall be performed and how we can ensure quality of the results. Then this ICMR thought, this is an international standard, ISO 15189 for quality in medical laboratories. We will go for accreditation based on this ISO 15189. Then what are the agencies to provide this accreditation? Then this board, Indian body, National Accreditation Board for Testing and Calibration Laboratory, or American Board, College of American Pathology, they thought these are providing accreditation. So we will go for this accreditation. And here I would like to say one thing. I would like to congratulate NABL for their tremendous support to all laboratories who are applying for this accreditation. And this accreditation is generally taking place in the evening, and many times people have faced this assessment from evening 6 o'clock to 12 o'clock. What is the need of this accreditation? Why government thought of this accreditation? Because this is a way to demonstrate competence in the laboratory. People are sure, okay, this laboratory is working with competence, and laboratory get recognition. It is a mandatory requirement now by the government, and it is also a stimulus for improvement for that accredited lab and also for other laboratories. Now many laboratories are applying for this accreditation. And government has made it mandatory for the private laboratory to go for this accreditation. And these laboratories who are applying, they have to keep this RT-PCR, real-time PCR for viral detection, in their scope of accreditation. And nowadays, they are accepting only those applications which are for COVID-19 testing approval. There is no specific way for accreditation for this COVID-19. They say you keep viral detection in your scope, and online assessment will be performed through video conferencing, and the process is very fast. And after getting this accreditation, then ICMR approved that particular laboratory for testing these COVID-19 samples. There are many benefits of this accreditation: standardization of the processes, demonstrability of results. We can manage our personnel in a more effective way, and better communication with the partners. But there are certain limiting factors. One is cost. Cost related to education about this quality management system. You have to develop understanding. Cost related to calibration, cost related to control materials, validation process, and also expenses of accreditation. And it is a time-consuming process. But one thing is clear, through this accreditation, we can deliver right report to the right patient at the right time and through the right process. Here, I am not saying laboratories which are not accredited, they are not doing good job. Very wonderful laboratories in the country or all across the globe are not accredited. But if we want to apply for this COVID-19, accreditation is a regulatory requirement, and otherwise also this is a third party recognition, and people believe more in accredited laboratories. Now, how we can go about this accreditation? What are the requirements? One thing is we have to develop understanding of ISO 15189 for accreditation. We have to develop understanding of molecular diagnostics to perform tests. And also, because this is a very infectious virus, transmission is very high from person to person. Human transmission is very high. This infection management is also very important. How we can develop this quality management system in our laboratory? If you see the different requirements of this ISO 15189, what is the general process, flow of activity in our lab? A patient comes with a request, with test request form in his or her hand, and the person go away with a report. And between these two activities, our whole activities revolves. This patient goes through, or his or her sample goes through this pre-examination processes, examination processes, and post-examination processes. And these processes are regularly evaluated by us whether we are able to comply with the requirement properly or not. And we also see how we can further improve our activities, how we can further improve our process. And organizational system and management, they have a big responsibility in the development of a effective structure and in the development of quality management system. They take care of resources like personnel, like space, like equipments, reagents and consumables, and how we are getting supply from our suppliers, and laboratory information system. And whenever a patient is not happy, then he can address his or her complaint to the laboratory. Or even if a patient is happy, but if he or she has certain suggestions, they can always tell laboratory through their feedback mechanism how they can further enhance their services or how they can make these services more useful. Personnel are one thing without whom a laboratory cannot function. So it is very important to take good care of our people in the laboratory, and selection is very important. First thing is their qualification. Qualification means in addition to education background, what is the training or experience required to perform a particular activity? Like in COVID-19 time, if suppose we are appointing somebody or people who are already working in our laboratory, they shall have training. If suppose somebody has to collect sample, how sample shall be collected? If somebody has to perform test, how this test shall be performed? And if person who is typing report, who is releasing result, what are the requirements related to this aspect? Then regular training in our laboratory on various aspects. In this COVID-19 timing, training related to use of personal protective equipments, what all PPE are required, and what is the mechanism of donning and doffing, actual work processes, biomedical waste management, interpretation of result, collection of result, this sample collection, and what are the regulatory requirements. All these things people should know. Then in vaccination, no special precaution is required. Whatever vaccination we use generally, vaccination against hepatitis B and tetanus, that will do. And also in addition to training on various aspects and post-training Evaluation. Competence of the people. Competence is ability to use acquired knowledge and skill in practical situations. They shall have problem-solving skill. They are testing some blinded pre-analyzed sample. As a supervisor or as a pathologist, you're observing how our staff is performing various activities and how they are maintaining equipment. This is also very important. Then people should get opportunity to upgrade their knowledge and skill through participation in CMEs, seminars, different training programs. Personal protective equipments generally required in laboratory: a waterproof full covered gown, sterile gloves, a 3-ply mask. Person who is directly involved in this viral extraction and testing, they shall wear N95 mask, or laboratory has to make their policy, or you can refer to guidelines of Ministry of Health and Family Welfare, what they are recommending. So you can make your own guidelines. Hood cap, face protector shield, and shoe cover. These are level 2 personal protective equipments. And in our laboratory, we have to keep good control over our process flow. We are
Dr. Jain, I'm sorry to interrupt, but we are getting a constant request from many participants that the volume is less. Can you slightly come closer to your system and speak a bit louder?
Is it okay now?
Yeah, that's good. Thank you. Thank you.
Okay.
Please continue.
We have to develop our process flow chart. How we are receiving requests, what are the requirements, how we are collecting samples, how we are transporting sample, receiving, preparation, registration. We are entering into laboratory information system, then we are performing tests. A process flow shall be maintained. Then we are interpreting our results. Then it is reported. If suppose some result is within the critical limit which require immediate therapeutic intervention, then that shall be informed to clinician. For this process flow, we shall have procedure at each step, so that everything is documented, everything is following that procedure in an error-free manner and in a harmonized way. If suppose you have to receive sample, first mandatory requirement in this COVID-19 time is the person shall have prescription from a government or private doctor and a government ID also. So it is the responsible registration people to check those things. Then sample collection, transport. So I have mentioned what all procedure they have to develop. If they are transporting sample, the sample shall be transported in a documented way. If a person is receiving sample in the laboratory, person has to see this information on the label is matching with the test request form. What all the person will check when they are preparing sample, then what are the requirements? They are not misplacing any sample. Then when they are registering, they are checking there is no test is missed from the prescription and no test is interpreted incorrectly. Because we are performing tests not only for COVID, we are performing other tests also. Sometimes what happens, doctors write for purpose smear analysis, they write essay, and the person who is at the registration counter, they think they are writing this prostate specific antigen. So we have to check with the prescription. Then we have to manage our laboratory information system in a required manner. Process flow shall be maintained, and we shall have proper system for examination. There shall be no downtime. Proper process flow is maintained. We are generating right result. This is checked for transcription error, and our QC is correct. When we are reporting, we are following the correct format, and then the report shall be reached to clinician within reasonable time frame. And also reporting of critical result and documentation of this information, who has informed a particular critical result and to whom, and then the report is reaching to a clinician. Specimen is very important. Our quality of our result is only as good as the quality of specimen received. As I said, requisition form shall be properly filled, and there shall be some prescription from the government or private doctor. Then you are collecting sample properly with the right technique, and you're labeling sample correctly. If sample need to be mixed, then you are mixing sample properly, following proper guideline, and then it is transported to the laboratory, keeping in mind it is at appropriate temperature and within reasonable time frame, keeping in mind integrity of the sample and safety of the person who is carrying those sample. Quality of our result is affected very much by the quality of reagents. It is very important to have a documented system when we receive reagent in our laboratory. What all we are checking, we shall have a documented system. We are checking with our purchase order. We are checking with the challan associated with that reagent, and also it is appropriate at appropriate temperature, and the outer pack is not distorted from outside. And the person who is receiving those reagents, name, date, and time. Then all these things are stored in a documented way. Okay, this thing need to be stored at 2 to 8 degree. This thing need to be stored at -20 degree, or something need to be stored at room temperature. We are storing accordingly. With this, we are sure, okay, we are performing all these activity in a required manner, but still we are not sure about the quality of reagent inside. For this, we have to perform lab acceptance testing. People use different terminologies for this activity. Some people say lot acceptance testing, lot validation, lot verification, kit validation, kit verification. All these things are okay, but our ISO 15189 is using lab acceptance testing for this activity. What is required, whether it is a simple reagent like some stain, Lischmann stain, Zeden stain, Dam stain, or some card test, or some quantitative parameters, we should have a documented procedure for lab acceptance testing, some acceptability criteria, then some evidence of actual performance of that activity. If we are generating instrument printouts, keep those in the record, and then these documents are approved by some authorized person, and they are allowing testing through this reagent for patient. When we are selecting a particular test, all of you have realized these days lot of discussion is going on about this COVID testing, which test is good and which kit is good. Sometimes we say this kit is good, sometimes we're saying this kit is not good, we are returning something. We have to see some information available with the reagent. Mr. Jotwani was also mentioning about diagnostic sensitivity and diagnostic specificity. We will discuss what are these. Diagnostic sensitivity means if a patient has disease, what is the possibility of having a test positive? Diagnostic specificity means if a patient doesn't have disease, what is the possibility of getting that test negative? And from the test perspective, if a test is coming positive, what is the possibility of having that disease? And if a test is negative, what is the possibility of not having that disease? On the basis of this, we decide about the utility of this test, and also we see when a particular test will come positive and for how long it will remain positive. What is the cost of a particular test? What is the expertise required to perform a particular test? all these things contribute to utility of a particular test. When we buy any instrument, we have to see certain things in the instrument. What are the desirable characteristics? What all we expect in that machine? Our requirement may be, it should be a 5-part differential. Suppose a hematology analyzer, it shall have autoloader, then precision for hemoglobin, RBC, platelet shall not be, say, more than 3%. For hemoglobin, linearity should be up to 25 gram per dl. These are all these things are our desire. Now we have to see what company people they are providing us. They may come to us with their specification. We have one model which has, although your requirement is throughput of 120 tests per hour, but we are able to provide you a machine either of throughput 100 or a machine of throughput 150, and this machine has linearity up to this much for hemoglobin, and there is precision this much. Whatever they say, those are their performance specification. Sometimes we say, okay, you keep your demo model in our lab, we will see how this laboratory is performing. And after that, we order for that machine. When we get that machine, then we say, okay, we will establish these things in our laboratory: throughput, linearity, carryover, precision. So whatever we get in our laboratory, that is called performance characteristics. We have to establish performance characteristics in our lab before using that machine for patient testing, whether it is matching with their specification or not, or almost close to that. Suppose we are using already a machine, we want to buy a new machine. How to compare result of our machine which is already in use and with the new machine? Or suppose we have machine A of company A and company B, C, D are also approaching. Then how to compare which machine is good? For this, we can do linear regression analysis and we can calculate coefficient correlation. On this x-axis, we write our accepted values over a full range of that parameter. On this y-axis, we write result of new machine. Say A versus A dash, A versus B, A versus C, A versus D. And this plot gives us one R2 value, correlation coefficient. If it is more than 0.9, this is acceptable. More than 0.95 shows excellent correlation. It shall be as close to 1 as possible. And in this graph, the line with the new system should almost correspond this 45-degree line. If this line is above this 45-degree line and it is parallel, that means there is systematic constant error. Some error is occurring with the same proportion at all levels. If this difference is increasing with increasing concentration, but it is affecting our results over full range, this is called systematic proportional error. So we have to see that line should be almost overlapping this line, and we have to see R2 value. Whatever machine we are selecting, we shall have for most of the parameters R2 value as close to 1 as possible. Then these terms, validation, verification, calibration. We have conducted so many training programs all across the country, and I always find a lot of misunderstanding about the concept of this validation and verification, because definition given in these ISO documents is also very confusing. They say, what is validation? Confirmation through provision of objective evidence that requirement for the specific intended use have been fulfilled. And what they say for verification? confirmation through provision of objective evidence that specified requirements have been fulfilled. Both definitions are very close to each other and very difficult to decide. In simple terms, validation means somebody is claiming something, and verification means we are confirming the claim of someone. What I mean to say in simple terms, I can tell you one story to explain it, and this story I will explain in Hindi, because in English it will lose its essence. All of you know the story of Shabri and Ramchandra ji. शबरी ने रामचंद्र जी को बेर ऑफर किए थे, तो बेर ऑफर करने के पीछे पर्पस क्या था? वेदर दीज आर गुड फॉर ईटिंग और नॉट, मीठे हैं वो बेर, कड़वे जहरीले या फीके नहीं हैं। तो उसके लिए उसने क्या किया, क्या प्रोसीजर अप्लाई किया? टेस्ट किया। जब टेस्ट किया तो उसका एक अनडॉक्यूमेंटेड क्लेम एसोसिएटेड था कि जो भी मैं आपको ऑफर कर रही हूँ, वट एवर आई एम ऑफरिंग यू, दिस इज गुड फॉर ईटिंग, दिस फ्रूट इज गुड फॉर ईटिंग। अब लक्ष्मण जी वॉज सिटिंग नेक्स्ट टू रामचंद्र जी। अगर वो ये सोचते कि आई एम हिज रियल ब्रदर, इट इज माई ड्यूटी टू चेक, एंड द शबरी इज आउटसाइड पार्टी, इट इज माई ड्यूटी टू चेक वेदर इट इज रियली गुड फॉर ईटिंग और नॉट। अगर वो उस बेर को टेस्ट करते तो वो क्या करते? शबरी के क्लेम को कंफर्म करते, ऑल्दो एक्चुअल स्टोरी में उन्होंने उसको टेस्ट नहीं किया था। तो अब अगर आप उसको रिलेट करते हैं, वट एवर Shabri did, she was making a claim, this is good for eating, so that was some sort of validation, and Lakshman ji was confirming the claim of Shabri. So what he would have done? Verification. And कई बार कुछ लोग कहते हैं validation is done at the level of manufacturer, verification is done at the level of user. It is the same thing, because they are claiming this machine has this much throughput, this much linearity, this much precision. In our laboratory, we are not claiming anything. We are only confirming their claim. So this is verification at our level. And we will discuss this in relation to COVID also, COVID-19. And calibration is method of ensuring the desired performance of a equipment, whether it is pipette or thermometer, centrifuge, or our different analytes. We ensure desired performance through this calibration, and for our different analyzers, which we use calibrators, which are nothing but a reagent system in which analyte is added in a fixed way. It has fixed quantity of analyte, so we calibrate our analyzer with this calibrator. And in relation to this COVID-19 or otherwise also, you see what all we do for validation. In our laboratory, one thing is validation of a machine, and we are doing verification. Now, suppose in relation to COVID-19 testing, we want to be very sure how we are getting the reliability of particular test by using controls, internal controls, external run controls. Then we are participating in a quas, and we are also checking competence of our personnel. We are developing a system for instrument calibration and maintenance, and before releasing result, we are correlating our result with the clinical finding. With all these things, we are ensuring that we will release a error-free report. And how time to time we check whether our people are working with our documented system or not. We keep record of this quality control, we keep record of this proficiency testing, we keep record of this personnel management, we keep record of this instrument maintenance and calibration. And we also see what is the claim of company about this diagnostic sensitivity and specificity of test, and what all we are getting in our laboratory. Then we do verification, okay, what were their accuracy claim, what were their imprecision claim, what is the analytical measurement range. So we checked with borderline positive and we check through the entire range, which are highly positive, and we also see what are the factors which can interfere in our results, responsible for false negative or false positive. What all need to be checked when we are deciding about the equipment? Verification of instrument requirement for space, and also check what kind of service you will get, extent of training, technical training required for a particular equipment, and whether your staff can use that machine with required competence or not. Clarity and usefulness of instruction material. Linearity. Linearity is the maximum value which you can report without dilution, or you call it as analytical measurement range also. Precision means how close results are to each other when you are repeating multiple times. Carryover means when you're running a high value sample after a low value sample and you're running that low value sample again, there is no difference between post and pre high value sample. Your results are not affected by that high value sample in the low value sample. Then comparability with the established method, and we also see performance in EQUAS. This analytical sensitivity is also very important. Analytical sensitivity, this is different from diagnostic sensitivity. It is the minimum difference which a machine can appreciate for a particular analyte. Like suppose your machine is measuring glucose. One machine says, or one machine is measuring 100, 110, 120, 130 or 140. Another machine 101, 102, 103, 104. Third machine 100.1, 100.2, 100.3, 100.4. The difference which a machine is able to appreciate, this is called analytical sensitivity. In first machine it is 10, in second machine it is 1, in third machine it is 0.1. So you have to see what is your requirement. So you decide accordingly. And analytical specificity means this machine is measuring only that particular analyte, not any other analyte in addition. A common example which I can give you, like in most of the three-part differential in our hematology analyzers, nucleated red cells are counted with total leukocyte count. Then we do manual count of these nucleated red cells and we subtract from the total leukocyte count. So they don't have analytical specificity. For this TLC, they measure all nucleated RBC and we call that as total leukocyte count. Analytical time, how much time the machine will take to analyze one sample. Then also we have to see throughput time. Suppose a machine requires some washing cycle in between, or we have to switch off that machine to give some rest to machine because of the generated heat. So all these things, or some washing cycles are required, all these things will affect our throughput time, although analytical time may be less. Then when you are deciding cost per test, you have to keep in mind operating time, cost of reagents, daily startup procedure, cost of controls, cost of machine divided over a period of time, cost of calibration, AMC or CMC. All these things contribute to cost per test. Some other variables also, but at least look for these things. Then staff acceptability and level of technical expertise required, and any relevant authority level, if it is required for that instrument, if you want to practice in a particular country, so you also see about that. Instrument maintenance is very important. Look for manufacturer recommendation. What all shall be included in daily maintenance? What all shall be included in weekly maintenance, monthly maintenance, and regularly you're getting preventive maintenance. by your manufacturer or supplier, and take official AMC or CMC for a machine. Now, sometimes this is a big question for a laboratory. What are these terms? IQ, OQ, PQ, and what all documents are required in this IQ, OQ, and PQ. IQ means installation qualification, Q means operation qualification, PQ means performance qualification. But before installation, we have to see certain things. We have to maintain certain records. Site assessment, if it is big machines, site assessment by manufacturer or supplier, then purchase order, in copy of invoice, list of parts provided with the machine, operational manual, procedure for that equipment, and also develop SOP for tests, and also you shall have training package with the machine. Now you are installing machine in your laboratory. First, visual inspection of the machine, and when an engineer is assembling, see how they are assembling machine. If suppose some environmental requirements are there, some site preparation is required, take care of all those things. Power check, then training, how to use that machine, how to perform different maintenance. For this training and post-training evaluation, and also keep documentation of all these things. Support service, name and contact detail. Then this IQ document is reviewed and approved by some authorized signatory, and it is signed by both company person as well as laboratory person. Then in operation qualification, calibration schedule and procedure. This calibration, if required, shall be with the help of calibrator, and the calibrator shall have metrological traceability. Then proper maintenance schedule, and what is the procedure of that maintenance. Then define in your laboratory linearity, this regression analysis, precision, and carryover for different analytes if required. Then check tested sample after running control. Then all these documents are reviewed and approved by authorized signatory, and again signed by laboratory person as well as company person. In performance, properly fill maintenance documents. If suppose some company person is coming for preventive maintenance or some repair, ask that person to fill that document. Also see performance in your IQC and IQAS. Also keep a list of your key operators of the machine, and all these things are then reviewed and approved. And there is final approval signature by section head or some authorized person. Then take care of physical hazard, fire safety, electrical safety, proper housekeeping, chemical safety. All these chemicals which can create some hazard shall have a label, and keep them in a cabinet with proper labeling. Then biohazard, how you're taking care of all the samples which can spread some infection, and take good care of biomedical waste as per latest guidelines of Central Pollution Control Board. Our examination part is very important. We use two terms, precision and accuracy. Precision is we are getting same or similar result on repeated measurement, and accuracy is how close our result is to true value. For precision, we do this IQC, and for accuracy, we compare our result with the IQAS target value.
Dr. Jain, I'm sorry to interrupt, but can you take it a bit faster? We have 15 more minutes and we have the question answer session as well.
Okay, right.
Yeah, request you to take it slightly more faster.
Sure. Then for IQC, what is required, how many controls we will run and how frequently, and it is decided by the laboratory based on their workload and distribution of their work, and this shall be evaluated when it is related to some quantitative parameter. We are running control for that daily with the help of LJ charts and Westgard rules. In hematology, there is some issue when we apply this LJ charts, because stability of the control is very less, and it is not possible to analyze by LJ charts. In that, we can do CV % comparison, and when you are using controls for differential count, it is better to calculate CV % with the help of absolute value rather than percentage. For EQUAS, we use Z-score, or we compare findings with the peer group or whatever evaluation criteria is provided to us by our PT provider. Although we are doing all these things, but a very important aspect of quality control is any pre-examination deficiency or any relevant point related to report shall be communicated to the clinician. And when we are reviewing patient result, we have to keep in mind delta check, what were the previous results, then interfering substance which can affect our result, clinical correlation in hematology, correlation with histogram and scattergram, interpretation of our numerical data. If some flags are there or some spurious result, then we have to take care of all those things. If we see in this COVID-19, what are the different tests available with us? This RT-PCR for this RNA, this test is positive from day 1 to day 28. On day 5, symptoms appear, and IgM positivity we see from day 7 to day 21. And IgG start coming positive on day 14, and IgM disappears on day 1, but this IgG stays for a longer period. So whatever policy we are developing for patient testing or our healthcare professional, we have to keep this aspect in mind at the time of interpretation. Then we have to review our patient result. We have to post our patient result, whether on our website or we are typing, take care of orthographic error, maintain all records, and monitor turnaround time. If you are finding any episode where you are not able to maintain turnaround time, record and what is the reason of that. Key points in this, when we are going for COVID-19 testing, you shall have registration with Pollution Control Board. You shall have MOU with service provider. You have to follow latest biomedical waste guidelines in relation to this COVID-19. You have to comply with latest Ministry of Health and Family Welfare and ICMR guidelines. For this, you keep yourself updated with their websites. Sample collection and sample transport, as we discussed, very important aspect. Take good care of it and follow correct documented method for everything, whether it is related to extraction or it is related to amplification or detection. Then correct interpretation of the result. Also keep in mind turnaround time and what all information is to be provided to clinician in the report, and whatever information you are supposed to provide to regulatory body, keep all those documents ready. Some important reference documents in your laboratory which are useful in this COVID time. SOP for extended use of N95 mask. These documents are available on AIIMS website, specimen packing, and transport from COVID areas to collection center, specimen collection processing, and also they have issued an advisory against spraying of disinfectant on people for COVID-19 management, because a few days back some people were spraying this disinfectant on suspected patients. Then also see guidelines from the Central Pollution Control Board for handling, treatment and disposal of waste gathering during treatment, diagnosis, quarantine of COVID-19 patient. And also keep yourself updated with Ministry of Health and Family Welfare and Indian Council of Medical Research guidelines for all updated knowledge. Our aim is to provide a little extra care to all our patients. If we take care of all these things, we can provide care in a better way, and we can save one more life, and every life is precious. One day, although these days everybody is sitting in their home, one day we have to reopen our country. Definitely transmission will increase, cases will increase, but now we are better prepared and adequately equipped. Definitely we will defeat this invisible enemy, but we have to remember one thing: we have to stay at home, we have to maintain social distancing, we have to stay safe, and we have to keep ourselves connected to keep our body and soul together. And TransAsia Biomedical Limited has created us this platform to address all these requirements. We are staying at home and maintaining social distancing, staying safe, and still we are connected. As Mr. Jotwani was saying, this is not face-to-face communication, but definitely this is heart-to-heart communication. And I sincerely appreciate your participation and time spent.
Okay, thank you, Dr. Jain, for such an enriching sessions. I'm sure there are a whole lot of take-home key messages for the audience and the participants. Now it's time for the question and answer session. We have been flooded with numerous questions, and we would like to do justice to all of them. The first one coming is from Dr. Mohana. If a lab is not accredited for molecular testing or not accredited at all, then in COVID times, can the lab seek accreditation for COVID testing?
Yes, definitely. But they will assess only molecular for viral detection. At present, there is no system of assessing for COVID-19. They are assessing for viral detection. But they will not assess for any other test, any other molecular test, or any other non-molecular test.
Okay, so only for molecular testing and not for the routine testing, right?
Molecular testing, and that also for this viral detection only by this RT-PCR.
And can you shed some light? How are we doing it?
They are doing this through video conferencing, and this process is very fast. Very fast, you get response from their place, and as soon as you close the non-conformance, they provide you accreditation within a few days only.
Okay, wonderful, wonderful. So the next query is, like in the present scenario, due to non-availability of the conventional controls, what can be the alternative?
Okay, one thing is, if suppose your laboratory is accredited, then you have to get a letter from your supplier. They are not able to provide you these controls. That means now you have to look for some alternate mechanism. If it is quantitative parameter like your hematology or biochemistry, what you can do, you are running retained sample. Otherwise also, whatever difference you are getting in retained sample, based on that difference, you calculate your monthly mean and standard deviation. If you add 2 standard deviation in your monthly mean, this will cover 50% of your data variation. You can keep that as your acceptability criteria. You want me to further elaborate on this?
I think that should be helpful. That should be great enough. The next question comes from Dr. Darshana. She's asking, what is the recommended test, RT-PCR or rapid test for healthcare workers in the laboratory? Do we do an RT-PCR or a rapid test? Which would be preferable?
If we want to see whether a person is infected or not, for this recommended test is RT-PCR. But suppose, because now in the present scenario, this RT-PCR is not available everywhere. Suppose somebody is working at a small place, and from 3rd May, everybody will open, or most of the people will open their laboratory, and they want to see whether their workers are at risk or not. Okay. This IgM, this becomes positive after 7 days. And after 14 days, this IgG is positive. Suppose they are testing some person with this IgM and IgG, both are positive. That means person has acquired infection and they have crossed 14 days. If suppose after 1 week they are performing this IgM again and this IgM is negative, after that only IgG will remain and that person can come for the duty. And if suppose in a person, because now it is almost you can say 3 months when we got the first case, in a particular person, if suppose in laboratory they are getting only IgG positive, that means the person acquired infection in the past, but now the person has developed adequate antibodies. But everything has certain limitations. If we are following this, then we have to keep the limitations in mind. Otherwise, if suppose IgM, IgG positive and they want to confirm, confirmation test is RT-PCR with very high predictive value.
Okay, so in a nutshell saying that for the preliminary screening of our staff in laboratory, we can well go for rapid test, right?
Yes.
But only for a confirmation, we may take up RT-PCR, right? Okay, thank you. The next question coming is hydroxychloroquine prophylaxis recommended for staff in laboratory, especially the phlebotomist and the staff who are involved in lab processing? So what is your take on that?
Actually, this question is very controversial. Controversial in the sense, we have to see how much exposure is there. If suppose somebody is collecting only sample, if you compare with your day-to-day situation, you are going to market also with face mask, and that shopkeeper is also using face mask, all other persons are using, you are talking to that person. If you are collecting sample with proper personal protective equipment, in that case, you can avoid this hydroxychloroquine. But if suppose some person is involved in the extraction or testing, in that case, you may think about this hydroxychloroquine. This has cardiotoxicity all across the globe. A lot of people now they are talking against this. If suppose somebody has some heart disturbance or other thing, patient may develop arrhythmia, or there is a specific condition, prolonged QT interval. So nowadays there are many reports which are talking against this hydroxychloroquine. But yes, if suppose some healthcare worker is involved in ICU care, in ventilator care, those patients have very high viral load. In that case, you will use this hydroxychloroquine as per recommended ICMR guidelines.
Okay, so summarizing means depending upon the kind of exposure to the patients, hydroxychloroquine prophylaxis can be decided. So for all those phlebotomists who are just involved in sample collection, if they're taking an adequate PPE protection, we may not go for a hydroxychloroquine prophylaxis. Whereas all those who are into processing or taking immediate or direct care of the patients, the prophylaxis is recommended, right? Am I correct?
Yes.
Okay, so why we are
laboratory is not going for COVID-19 testing. A general laboratory performing routine tests and specialized tests, but not COVID-19. In that case, this prophylaxis is not required.
Wonderful. Okay, so while we are on this question, I would just like to expand it a bit further. For all those people who are involved in kind of servicing or repairing instruments, who attend to a lot of ventilator care, I mean the service engineers also, So just for the benefit of the audience also, so what is your recommendation for those kind of people?
For those people, they follow appropriate personal protective equipment. No, this hydroxychloroquine is required.
Okay. Okay. So we need not go for prophylaxis as such. Okay. So the next question is coming from Dr. Rasika. Can you explain how do we discard suspected and positive COVID samples?
These are discarded in we are collecting sample in a poly bag. Then in second, after double covering, we discard these samples in the red bag. And also see for the latest guidelines by the Central Pollution Control Board and their annexes.
Okay, so there is another very interesting but relevant question. Nowadays, due to COVID, few labs do not have a formal EQUAS. So in that case, can ILC be done with a non-NABL laboratory? And if yes, then what is the frequency and what are the number of labs?
If suppose a formal EQUAS is available for a particular test in the country, so you have to go for the EQUAS only. And now NABL has made it mandatory. You participate only in ISO 17043 accredited EQUAS, because nowadays many EQUAS are accredited as per ISO 17043, which is standard for proficiency testing. Now question is, how many laboratories if you don't have EQUAS, formal EQUAS? ISO 15189 says it is the comparison between two laboratories. One laboratory yours and second is your referral laboratory. That means you have to send sample to only one laboratory. Then how frequently? There is a guideline by Michael Thompson, ISO this IUPAC guidelines of 2006, which says participation in proficiency testing shall be more than twice in a year. If you are participating for 3 times or more, that is more than sufficient. One lab and participate at least 3 times.
Okay. Okay, so next question, though we have done with many of these questions, but just a couple of few more. Dr. Abhijit Davale is asking, is PPE necessary for small labs having sample load less than 30 samples per day? So what do you advocate in PPE, and what all PPE should be taken over by or donned over by lab staff?
Actually,
should I repeat?
PPE is not decided by the number of samples. It is decided by the degree of risk involved. So whoever is working in the laboratory, and to give confidence also to the people who are working in the laboratory, they are adequately protected, we shall have this level 2 personal protective equipment, a head cap, face mask. If you are involved in the direct testing, or you are thinking you may come in contact with the aerosol, face shield, gown, gloves, and shoe cap.
Okay, wonderful. So the next question is from Dr. Prerna Roy. How will we attend to histopathological specimens from a COVID-19 positive patient? Histopath specimens from COVID-19 positive patients. Is there any particular protocol for that?
For this, like other thing, we have to adequately cover these samples in poly bag, and then these are discarded in the red bag. And for this also, there are defined guidelines based on the website of this CDC as well as on the AIMS website. For details, they can follow those guidelines.
Okay. The next question is coming from Dr. Charu Agarwal. What are the precautions while doing FNAC in the lab? Any particular precautions?
All routine procedures shall be avoided. It was discussed in Ministry of Health and Family Welfare meeting, okay. I think on March 19, and they said in this COVID-19, if something is not affecting care or not affecting health, so all these procedures shall be avoided. Unnecessary you are exposing yourself, and unnecessary you are exposing patient to hospital environment. And these days they are promoting this online consultation and telemedicine. What is the use of all those things? We want to avoid patient contact in the hospital as well as our contact with the patient.
Hmm. Hmm. So as you have said, all the elective FNACs should be avoided as far as possible. But suppose in a hospital setting, we have, just to expand on it, if we have some patient coming for FNAC, what would be your recommendation?
Actually, what most hospitals, they are deciding, and what many government hospitals are deciding, and this is decided by PGI Chandigarh also, whosoever will be admitted in the hospital, first they will test for RT-PCR, only then they will perform the procedure. So in that case, you have to go with that. And recommend best is you are testing for RT-PCR as well as for antibody. If suppose PCR is negative and the antibodies, these are positive, that means the patient had previous exposure. So in that case, you have to follow that.
Okay, just one or two last questions. Dr. Anjana Mittal wants to know, can ELISA be done in non-NABL labs?
Right now, they are not, in their guidelines, they are not approving any private lab, whether it is NABL accredited or non-NABL accredited. Whenever they will post this monoclonal antibody on their website, then they will say, they may say they will approve only those laboratories which have some this card test for viral detection in their scope, NABL accredited, just like these guidelines, or they may make some other guideline, or they may start approving laboratories for this monoclonal antibody, a fast process, just like for this RT-PCR. Right now, we don't have any guidelines from ICMR.
So summarizing, basically, be it NABL or non-NABL, we do not have any approval as such from ICMR guidelines. And especially with the private labs, no other guidelines have been provided. And one terminal question from Dr. Indranath, centrifugation of any blood or fluid sample, is it safe in the laboratory in current times?
If you are centrifuging something, so you have to use centrifuge with a lid. Don't use open centrifuge, because unnecessary there will be generation of fumes and aerosols. We have to decontaminate properly after use.
So even in the suspected samples or non-suspected samples, we have to consider all of them belonging to a COVID patient asymptomatic, and we have to use a closed or a lid centrifuge basically to avoid any transmission or aerosols. Is it right, sir?
Right.
Okay, wonderful. Wonderful. We have taken quite many questions, but we may not have covered all of them. So for all those questions which we could not answer, please feel free to write to us on our email ID. We'll be more than happy to answer all your queries. Thank you, Dr. Jain. Now I would like to welcome our CEO, Mr. Ravi Kaushik, to deliver the vote of thanks. Over to you, Mr. Ravi Kaushik.
Yeah, thank you, Dr. Preet. My name is Ravi Kaushik, and I am the CEO for Transasia Biomedicals. It was wonderful to have Dr. Jain deliver a fantastic webinar today. We really appreciate him taking out the time. These times are precious. We are going through a lot of uncertainty and change on a daily basis. But there was almost 1,200 plus people, and I think most of them healthcare professionals. We at Transasia are trying on our own to spread the knowledge, to help provide as much as we can through the healthcare fraternity. And we are making this knowledge available in the spirit of serving many more patients through the doctors. Also, our service engineers and our sales team continues to provide all the supplies. And we will continue these webinars next week as well. We now have some international speakers. So I welcome you all to join us next week. If I can have the slide, please. For next week, on 27th, we have a webinar from an international doctor, Dr. Gaurav Sharma, who is based in Detroit. And he's 15 to 20 years of experience in pathology. And he will talk about testing in the US and the lessons learned from the first 100 days. So that should be very interesting because US has had the biggest number of patients and unfortunately deaths, but we are getting tons of data, and that data can be helpful for India. On 28th, we have another webinar, which is with the very reputed doctors from Harvard and Stanford and the University of Hong Kong. Dr. Mark Berg from Stanford, Dr. Nader from Harvard, and Dr. Leo from the University of Hong Kong. These three reputed doctors will talk about challenges in laboratory investigations and clinical management. And I think this should also be very, very interesting given their vast experience, as well as the examples that they will bring from these three different big hospitals and hospital settings, which should then be very useful for the doctors in India. So I encourage all of you to please join us. And again, I would like to thank Dr. Jain as well as all of you for your precious time. And we look forward to our continued association. And thank you for helping us help you, and we are in this together. TransAsia stands proud of helping and standing up during this time, and we will continue to do so in the weeks to come, months to come, and years to come, as we have done for the last 41 years. With that, Jai Hind and Namaste. Thank you.